was July 31st, 1975. Las Vegas Hilton. 8,500 fans screaming under neon lights. The air thick with cigarette smoke and anticipation. A widow in the front row whispered a trembling prayer for her late husband. Elvis paused mid-song, leaned into the microphone, and what happened next left the entire audience dead silent. The Las Vegas Hilton buzzed like a living creature. July 31st, 1975. The day promised spectacle, and the crowd of 8,500 was hungry for it. Spotlights cut through the smoky haze, illuminating the stage where Elvis's band tuned instruments with practiced precision. The audience surged and shifted, waving signs, clapping hands, snapping cameras, their voices a river of anticipation. Every click, every murmur, every cheer added weight to the air. In the very front row, a widow held a faded photograph of her late husband. She moved her lips in a silent prayer, a whisper lost to the raucous crowd, but somehow almost imperceptibly felt. The strings of the orchestra began to swell as "Love Me Tender" filled the room. And then, mid-verse, Elvis froze. His eyes scanned the crowd, and there it was, a presence that cut through the noise. He turned slowly, and his gaze locked on the whispering figure. The auditorium seemed to hold its collective breath. Could a performer truly sense the hidden sorrow of a stranger? Had the roar of thousands ever been so still? Mini cliffhanger. In that instant, he stepped closer, eyes unwavering, drawing the audience into a moment they would never forget. The whispered prayer was fragile, nearly swallowed by the thrum of 8,500 hearts pounding in unison, yet Elvis heard it. A subtle tilt of his head, almost imperceptible, acknowledged the widow in the front row. Security shifted nervously, hands hovering near belts, uncertain whether to intervene or trust the artist's instincts. The band faltered for a split second, a missed note echoing through the cavernous Hilton. Murmurs rippled from the front rows, a wave of speculation. Is he okay? What's happening? The audience felt the tension, a delicate collision between celebrity protocol and human vulnerability. For a moment, the music hung suspended, neither advancing nor retreating, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Elvis smiled softly, eyes still locked on the widow, and whispered words only she could hear. The sound of the crowd receded in his focus, the roar of applause muted into a distant hum. How often do we overlook silent pleas in a world obsessed with noise? Can empathy be more powerful than 1,000 voices calling for attention? The widow's lips trembled, her grip tightening on the photograph. A single tear traced her cheek, catching the harsh stage lights like a fragile jewel. Around her, the audience was suspended in anticipatory tension, sensing without knowing the cause, the extraordinary intimacy unfolding. Stagehand Tommy Reynolds, crouched at the side of the stage, exchanged a glance with bandleader James Burton, both silently acknowledging the unprecedented moment. Even seasoned crew members, accustomed to chaos, felt the weight of something greater than music. Mini cliffhanger. Elvis took a small step toward the edge of the stage, and the crowd instinctively leaned in, waiting, as if the air itself had thickened with possibility. Whispers spread like wildfire across the front rows. The initial curiosity had become a palpable tension, and the crowd shifted, murmurs weaving into a restless rhythm. Some fans leaned forward, craning their necks for a better view. Others clutched scarves and programs, unsure if they should cheer or stay silent. Stagehands exchanged anxious glances. Tommy Reynolds muttered under his breath, He's doing something no one's ever done before. The band faltered again, a soft thud of missed notes echoing through the vast Hilton auditorium. The widow's trembling fingers clutched the faded photograph tighter, a silent plea anchoring the growing storm of emotion. Someone shouted from the balcony, "What's happening? Is he okay?" But the voice was swallowed by the heavy anticipation, unanswered yet fully heard by thousands. The crowd became a living amplifier of uncertainty, oscillating between excitement and unease. Every heartbeat seemed magnified, each shuffle of a foot or rustle of paper a drumbeat of suspense. Could one person's vulnerability halt a legendary performance? Could compassion truly take precedence over the rules of spectacle? And yet, as Elvis shifted slightly toward the widow, a ripple of empathy spread through the audience. A single young man clapped tentatively, testing the waters. Then another. Soon, hands rose in hesitant applause, not for the music, but for the courage unfolding before them. The air shimmered with a strange combination of awe and suspense. Even security, initially poised to act, relaxed, caught in the spell of a human moment that defied protocol. The stage itself seemed transformed, no longer merely a platform for performance, but a conduit for connection. Midway, the widow lifted her head, eyes meeting Elvis's, a silent exchange heavier than words. A photographer in the balcony snapped a photo, knowing instinctively this frame would define the night. Reflective question. When have you witnessed a moment that demanded courage over protocol? Could one small act of kindness shift the mood of thousands? The crescendo of tension continued as Elvis stepped forward, inch by inch, toward the edge of the stage. Each movement measured, deliberate, magnifying the anticipation. The crowd leaned with him, caught in collective suspense, as if the air itself had thickened into expectation. Mini cliffhanger, with a final glance to his band. He took a single, decisive step toward the widow, and the entire auditorium seemed to hold its breath in perfect unison. Then, in a breath that seemed suspended outside of time, Elvis did the unthinkable. He stepped away from the microphone stand, leaving the familiar rhythm of the band behind, and moved deliberately toward the edge of the stage. Soft strings from the orchestra swelled, filling the pause with a gentle, almost sacred music that seemed to honor the moment itself. The crowd went dead silent, as if the entire room collectively recognized that something extraordinary was unfolding. Reaching the widow, Elvis knelt gracefully, careful not to break the fragile aura of the instant. He gently lifted her hand, guiding it to the microphone, and whispered words meant only for her ears. "Tell him he's remembered." The auditorium hung in suspended disbelief. No one moved, no one dared breathe too loudly. Short bursts of thought cut through the silence. He did that. Here, now. Everyone's frozen. The intimacy of the gesture, a legendary figure bending down to honor the sorrow of a stranger, reverberated through each spectator's chest. Cameras clicked softly, some capturing the tears on her cheeks. The photograph clutched to her chest, the subtle quiver of her lips forming a smile. Reflective question: can empathy be louder than applause? Could you ever forget a gesture so intimate in front of thousands? The audience, thousands strong, had become a living testament to shared humanity. Eyes glistened across balconies and floor seats alike. Even the band seemed to play softer now, every note measured to preserve the sanctity of the encounter. Security, once tense, now relaxed completely, understanding that nothing could interrupt this human moment. Small, tangible artifacts punctuated the scene. A cap had slipped to the floor in the tension of anticipation. A bootleg photographer crouched discreetly in the corner, and the widow's photograph glowed under the harsh stage lights, now a talisman of collective reverence. A ripple of emotion moved through the crowd, first subtle, then unstoppable. Hands began to rise, tentative at first, then in a swelling chorus of shared compassion. The child on the balcony mimicked the gesture, tiny fingers waving in awe. Mini cliffhanger, tears streaked down the widow's cheeks as thousands erupted into a standing ovation. The auditorium transformed into a cathedral of empathy. The auditorium, once buzzing with anticipation and tension, now swelled with a new energy, one of collective compassion. Fans reached forward instinctively, offering flowers, scarves, and letters. Their gestures gentle, careful, as if afraid to break the fragile moment. Elvis's band resumed playing, but with quiet sensitivity, every note respectful of the scene unfolding at the stage's edge. Security officers, once alert and rigid, allowed themselves to be absorbed by the atmosphere, caught in awe of a human connection that transcended celebrity. From the balcony, a small child raised a hand tentatively, and a chorus of voices spontaneously joined in a soft, heartfelt hum. The air vibrated with shared emotion, each member of the audience now fully present, fully alive in empathy. Objects took on symbolic weight, a dropped cap at the foot of the stage, a bootleg photographer's lens catching a tear-streaked face, a note passed backstage from a fan who had witnessed the silent prayer. These small items became icons of a collective memory, tangible proof of a shared experience. Reflective question: how do communities transform when vulnerability is honored? What invisible threads tie us together in the most unlikely places? The widow smiled, her hand still resting gently in Elvis's as he straightened, offering her a nod of acknowledgement that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. Across the floor, fans exchanged glances, understanding that they were witnesses to something rare, something that would linger far longer than the music itself. The orchestra's soft strings swelled again, punctuating the delicate rhythm of compassion as applause rippled through the room, not just for the performer, but for the humanity revealed in front of thousands. Cameras clicked, recording the collective heartbeats of the audience. Stagehands whispered in disbelief, recalling the stillness that had preceded the transformation. The widow's photograph, now cradled carefully in her hands, seemed to glow in the stage lights, a symbol of enduring love and memory honored in the most unexpected way. From the floor to the balconies, the Hilton had become a living testament to connection, a space where strangers became participants in something larger than themselves. Mini cliffhanger, news photographers captured the scene in fleeting frames, knowing instinctively that this moment would be retold for decades. A legend born of empathy and courage. The next day, the story rippled far beyond the walls of the Hilton. Newspapers carried headlines like "Elvis Stops Show for Widow," capturing the awe of a moment that had defied expectation. Bootleg recordings circulated among collectors, preserving the hush, the whispered words, and the swell of empathy that had transformed thousands. Stagehands recalled the electricity in the air. Tommy Reynolds later said, "I've worked hundreds of shows, but that night, it was as if the entire building was alive with compassion." Bandleader James Burton described the pause as surreal. He didn't just perform music, he performed humanity. Backstage, a plaque would later be dedicated, where compassion became legendary. July 31st, 1975, the widow recounted telling her late husband's story to a room of 8,500 souls. The memory forever etched in her heart. Fans wrote letters for years, sharing how witnessing such raw kindness changed their perception of celebrity, of connection, and of themselves. Foundations and tributes followed, small gestures that honored the spirit of that night. Scholarships, fan club memorials, and informal gatherings at the Hilton stage. Objects remained as proof: the cap left at the foot of the stage, the photograph held close, and bootleg snippets that captured every nuance of a pause that became monumental. Reflective question: how does one fleeting act echo across decades? Can a single gesture ripple far beyond its immediate moment, shaping lives we may never know? Visitors still pause today at the Las Vegas Hilton stage, imagining the hush, imagining the tenderness that fell over 8,500 people. The auditorium had been changed forever, a testament not to the music alone, but to the power of a legendary figure choosing compassion over protocol. Mini cliffhanger. Even now, those who witness the stage cannot help but wonder if, in that instant, they too felt a heartbeat larger than themselves. A shared humanity made tangible and unforgettable. Compassion, when wielded boldly, transcends spectacle. One whispered prayer, one legendary figure choosing empathy over protocol, transformed thousands in a single instant. Fame fades, but human connection endures. Reflection lingers. In your own life, will you pause, notice, and act when someone silently reaches out? Can a single gesture ripple through hearts unseen? The crowd's roar, the stage lights, the photograph, all reminders that courage and kindness leave footprints far deeper than applause ever could. Mini cliffhanger, and when you do, who else might feel the ripple, quietly changed forever? Moments like these show that true legend isn't measured in hits or headlines, but in courage and compassion. Share this story with someone who needs to witness empathy in action, or reflect quietly: where in your life could a single act of kindness change everything?